please say your name and where you're from?
I am Tawana Yvette, and I am here from the Washington, D.C. area in the US.
And where would be the best place to start with your story?
Childhood.
Okay.
Definitely the best space is to begin in childhood, because it really played a large role in who I am today. As a child, my voice was silenced. I am an incest resulting in pregnancy by my father, survivor. But I did not seek the correct help for that experience because I went into survival mode. I was placed in a New York City group home. My mother's side of the family turned their backs on me. Thank goodness my sisters on my dad's side all surrounded me because it could have been very different if they had not. I had children very early. I had my first daughter in high school, 6 weeks before graduation. Um, I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to love. You know what I mean? And because I
Yeah.
wasn't receiving that love at home, I lived in a group home. Um, I wanted to love. So I had her at 18, and I spent years in abusive relationships in one way or another. After having her, I got married shortly after that, and that was just not the right move. He was not the right person. Everybody tried to warn me, but you think you love somebody and you go ahead and marry them. That's what we were supposed to do. Is Gen X, the boomers told us, you graduate high school, you get a job, you get married. Um, he was abusive in some ways, and I made I had two other children, and I made poor decisions after I left him. um I made very poor decisions in my children's childhood. I know in my heart I did the best I could, but it's still not good enough for them, so I take their side on it. um Went through a lot. I had a car wreck 20 years ago that took my ability to earn for my family away, and I was the breadwinner. I've worked for White House appointees before, so that was another devastating hit. I still have the injury from 2004, which is titanium sitting on my sciatic nerve, as well as epilepsy. And got divorced from my first husband, married my second husband. That was a disaster. That ended in divorce, but the kicker came with the man that I met in 2020, and that's when my life really began to change. It really took a very dark turn while I was with him, and I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so I can't diagnose anyone, but I can say that when you look up covert narcissism, he checks every single box. But here I am. I thought I was, picking better because he's a fourth grade teacher, right? What could happen? No,
And
wrong move.
with covert narcissism as well, it's really hard to pick up on, isn't it?
It's extremely hard to pick up on, and in fact, even up until a year and a half after the relationship was over, I, I didn't say he abused me because he never hit me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until my therapist, she said, I think you're in a space now where I can, share this with you. But he checks every box for covert narcissism. And you went through what prisoners of war go through with the psychological torment and the psychological breakdowns. Um, and I had to receive that then, because when I really thought about it and did some reading on it, she's right. She was right. And that relationship ended with me attempting to take my life. I had never, even with what I went through as a child, I had never felt so worthless, small, or unnecessary in my life. He broke me down bit by bit for 2 years, screaming, the constant arguing over nothing, just picking arguments to take away from the good moments. And, I had it in my mind that, oh, it's me. I'm the problem. Let me fix what he's talking about, thinking that it was me. No, it was his insecurities and his lack of faith in himself. And because my light shines so brightly, he had to dim it to make himself feel better. So I attempted to take my life. I was not successful, thank goodness. I'm happy about that now. I wasn't happy that night, but I'm happy about it now. Um, and it truly put me on a fast track to my healing journey. That's where my life really, truly began. I started losing people left and right. The more I healed, the more people walked away from my life, but I had to really think about it. I bonded with those people over trauma. You know what I mean? So when you heal that aspect of you, you don't have anything in common anymore because you've gone into a healing space where they're still in their trauma space. So I lost a lot of friends, family members, things like that. And finally, after doing, I mean, I've done a million different healing modalities, regular talk therapy, RTT hypnotherapy, Akashic readings, Dark Night of the Soul classes and things like that. And I finally realized I need to take these masks off. I want to be me. I just want to be me. I don't want to be the me that I have to be for this person or for that person. I really realized that I put up different masks for each person so that I could be what they wanted me to be. And I had to I cut a lot of people out of my life. I had a serious conversation with one sister who lives across town and told her the only reason I'm giving you a chance to repair our relationship is because when you could be there for me, you have been. Um, I announced myself as a gifted psychic and intuitive healer. I've always been one. I've always known, and I hid it from the world. So technically I was kind of hoarding my gifts and the universe doesn't like that. And really, as of January, I've been unstoppable. I tell my story with pride. I no longer feel guilt or shame. And, despite, people on the outside, part of my old life would be like, oh God, I wouldn't want to live her life. I'm happy. I finally know what peace feels like. I finally know what it's like to not be in survival mode. I finally know what it's like to do things for myself and fill my own cup. And since I announced on that very first podcast that I'm a gifted psychic and healer, the opportunities that have come into my life, sorry, I'm getting emotional,
It's okay.
have been more, so much more than I could have ever imagined. I'm going to be a published author in October. People want to hear my story. My email is full of people saying, hey, I saw you on this podcast. Thank you. There's no greater feeling than opening your email and seeing that you touched someone's heart, seeing that you were the voice for them, you know? And so, life has been incredibly rewarding the last 6 months, despite my children not being in my life. They're all adults. Um, but the trauma was too much for them. And I understand it. I support them. They are beautiful. They're very achieved women. I admire them for their strength and their bravery. How much bravery does it take to tell your mom, I need space? That takes a lot of bravery. So I'm proud of them for that. And if they want to be part of my life, they are always welcome. Not under the conditions we had before, where I just ran myself ragged to appease them as adults. But I can't believe my life is this good. The little 15-year-old in the group home who literally cried until my head felt like it was splitting open could never have imagined being a published author. people wanting to hear me talk about the trials and tribulations I've been through, like, nothing in the world can compare to this feeling. Nothing. So, now I use my voice to inspire others. I use my voice for those who feel like they're not ready to share their story yet. I use my voice for positive things, to speak great things into other people's lives. I use my psychic gifts to give people insight into their lives and serve as the bridge between the two realms. And I can't believe it. It's so hard to believe that this is me. This is my life. I could finally take the mask off. I finally don't have to be anyone but me, but what I was created to be.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. I can't I can't express what it does to you. It really changes you. Um Once you step into your own power, once you give yourself permission to use that power, once you love yourself. I love me. I never loved myself before. I hated myself. And in fact, when I was involved with religion, I thought I was a child of the devil because I couldn't imagine why else God would allow the heinous things that happened to me before I was old enough to make my own decisions to happen. So I had just chalked it up in my mind that I was a child of the devil. And I
Could
lived with that. And I lived like that for 47 years until
uh,
my healing journey began.
would it be okay to ask a little bit around what happened when you were a child?
Absolutely. My mom, I love her to pieces. She's with me in spirit. Um, my mom went through a lot. She really did, trying to be what her parents wanted her to be. But my mom lost herself when my pop died. I was 2 when my pop died. She was a daddy's girl. She gave up on herself. And so she would get into these toxic relationships and, there was just a lot of chaos and things in the home. But we moved around New York a lot, like from apartment to apartment to apartment. And then she lost her job and we moved to Seattle when I was 10 with my aunt and my uncle. And that was the best 1 year of my childhood. I felt like a kid. I'd go playing in the woods. I got to see how cows are born. Like, this is a New York City girl. You know what I mean? Like, all of this was fascinating to me. Um, but she was going through some things and she sent me back to my biological father in New York City. And I really didn't know him. I didn't remember him. He had been out of my life since I was 4. And that's where the nightmare truly began. That's where it began. And he wouldn't leave the phones in the house. He would unplug the phones from the wall and take them with him to work so I couldn't call my nana or my sister or my mom and tell them what was going on. Um, he had a girlfriend at the time. She packed up and left. She left because she knew what he was doing and she wanted no parts of it. Miss Jean was wonderful soul, and I remember her telling me, I'm trying to protect you, but I gotta go. Um, so from 10 to 15, my father was disgusting. He was disgusting. It was full-fledged penetration. And yeah, it was bad. So when my mother moved back to New York when I was 11 and a half, he threatened her and pretty much coerced her into marrying him because he had this, high paying government job with immigration. And my mother had just come back. She was in nursing school. So he threatened to take me away and that she would never see me again if she didn't marry him. So she went ahead and married him. And, she, because she was a nurse in nursing school at the time, um, she was gone at night. You know what I mean? and my nightmare continued. Um, so when I was 15, I found out I was expecting a baby, and I terminated that pregnancy. Um, I know I get a lot of judgment for that, but I was 15 years old, and I hated that thing. I call it the thing that was inside of me. I knew that I wasn't even capable of taking prenatal vitamins and going to the doctor's appointments that are mandatory when you're pregnant to give the child away. I knew that I didn't want it to exist. And that sounds terrible because the child is innocent, right? They don't know. So I terminated that pregnancy. In New York City, it wasn't hard to do. And I told my mom, the termination I had yesterday was not my boyfriend's. And she freaked out. She didn't know what to do. She was going through a very, very deep depression. She had just received a medical diagnosis that was very scary. Um, and so, she didn't have the power to earn any money anymore. She was filing for disability. She was not okay. And she took it out on me. And so, like, she called my sister because I literally wrecked my room, literally tore everything apart because I just had so much anger in me, like, "Why aren't you taking my side?" type of anger at the time. And so my sister came and got me, and, we checked into a children's psych ward in New York City, and, I was there for 30 days for evaluation. They sent me home because I had the option when I was there to go in a group home, but I said no because I was terrified. New York City group homes are terrifying. And so they discharged me home with a discharge plan, of course, counseling, follow-ups, things like that. And I spent one night in that house, and I remember staying awake, locking the door, and I literally put my back up against the bedroom door and put my knees up to my chest and stayed like that so he couldn't come in the room. Um, the next
Can
morning I got up and acted like I was going to school, but I went to the payphone and called my counselor at the hospital, and she told me to just come and meet her. And so I went across town and met her at the hospital, and I was in a group home a few days later. Um,
can can I ask as well, when you were in the psych ward, did you tell anyone about the sexual abuse that you experienced?
I I didn't tell how far it went. And,
'Cause
that's my fault because I felt so much shame. Like, shame has kept me from speaking what happened for 47 years because I was so ashamed. And it wasn't until the year before last that I started disclosing how far the abuse went, to family and other people. But no, I didn't even tell my best friend. My best friend from high school found out 2 years ago and just crumbled. It hurt her heart. Um, she's actually the one who went with me for the termination. Um, but she thought, I lied and said it was my boyfriend's. But yeah, guilt and shame, those 2 things. And what I've come to realize, of course, in the last 2.5 years is that doesn't belong to me. He should be guilty and ashamed. Like, why was I feeling guilty and ashamed? But they program you. You know what I mean? They mentally program you so that you're the one who feels bad for sharing the family secret. And so, yeah, it was quite the experience. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But
could Oh, I'm so sorry.
no, no, go
I
ahead,
was
my dear.
I was just gonna ask because I think there's a lot of survivors, especially when they're minors, that keep it to themselves when sexual abuse is happening. I
Yes.
was wondering if there was any signs that you picked up on that maybe other people could have seen? Does that make sense? So anything that kind of would have given away kind of signs that you were being sexually abused?
Um, some of the family knew I was sexually abused. My siblings, I remember I had not met my siblings on my dad's side, or I couldn't remember them. I, I see pictures of them, when I was like 2, but I didn't remember them. And they came back into my life at that time. And so I remember my eldest sister, who lived in Hawaii at the time, she was in the Navy. She had come to visit, so I was all excited, to meet her. And we met at I call her my stepmom, but it's my biological father's ex-wife. So we met there, and we're all talking and in the living room laughing and have food and music. And she pulls me to the back bedroom and she says, "How long?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? How long, and what has he done to you?" She knew. My sister knew. And so I remember her being the one to drop me off back home the next day. And she was in the living room talking to them, and she said she's coming back with me to Hawaii. And my parents threatened to call the cops on her and have her arrested. So she couldn't take me with her, but she tried. She tried with all of her heart because she knows the monster he is. So his ex-wife's children, my siblings on that side, they knew about the sexual abuse. They only found out about the pregnancy Thanksgiving, this past Thanksgiving, when I went to visit them. So no, I didn't share. Even my best friend from high school didn't know because I was so ashamed. I felt so dirty. It was terrible, to be a 15-year-old and just feel so dirty, so tainted, like damaged goods.
That's so hard, especially when you're facing that all by yourself.
It is. It was. It was. It was not an easy thing to go through. But I did have the love and support of my siblings on my dad's side. They've always been loving. They've always been supporting. In fact, his ex-wife worked for DFACS, but in a different borough. Like New York City is divided up into 5, let's just call it like 5 different states. So she worked in one borough and made a phone call to the borough that I was in to get me in one of the better group homes. That, of course, that came with its challenges as well, but like I got beat up, group homes are no good for girls, it's just not a good experience in New York City.
What
Um,
does a group home in New York look like?
So a lot of them use, like, the first one I was in is called diagnostics, and that one was New York City school buildings are built almost like prisons. They're 5 stories high, no elevators, stairs everywhere, and then classrooms. So they took an old school and converted it to this diagnostic group home. And what they're doing while they're there is watching your behavioral patterns to see, do you need to go to the really, really bad one, or can we put you in a semi-decent one? So from there, I went to, it's called Crest Group Home, and it's in Far Rockaway, Queens in New York. And it's, off the beach, right near the big airport in New York. And it was it was in the projects. So the projects in the United States are like stories that are like 20 buildings high, 20 stories high. And, it's never a safe place ever. The projects are never safe. Um, so they took 4 apartments and joined them together, broke down the barrier walls, and that was that group home. Now, again, that was one of the better ones, but it didn't come without its challenges. Um, so yeah, it's not comfortable. There's nothing about it that's good. Nothing. Um, I stayed there at Crest for 2 years and found out I was pregnant by my daughter's father. And my counselor there, I love her. She's still in my life. She loves me so much. Sorry.
It's
Um,
okay.
they tried to get me to terminate that child because I had a full college scholarship to any university in the US. But the catch was I couldn't have a baby, and, I wouldn't do it. I would not give that child up, and so I had to be transferred to the pregnant girls group home, and the pregnant girls group home is a they're called row houses in New York, so it was a beautiful neighborhood. It was on the Upper East Side, beautiful neighborhood, um, but, again, you're dealing with troubled teenagers who are now hormonal. There are 36 of us in this space.
Oh, wow, there's so many of you.
Yes, the first group home I was in, there was probably 100. That's the diagnostic group home. The second one, I believe there were 12 or 14 of us in that one, so that one was kind of balanced as far as space is concerned. And then the other one, there were 35, 36 of us there. And you've
Oh
got
my
35,
goodness.
36 pregnant hormonal teenagers together. Um, so there was a lot of arguing, there wasn't a lot of rest, competition, and then, there's only one payphone per floor, so that people are hogging the phone. It had its own challenges, but I still have 2 friends in my life from that experience. You know, we all share the same story. And after that, I was 18 years old, so I could be released as an adult. Um Then I went on to live with my daughter's grandmother and, went on with life from there. So yeah, group homes in New York City are no joke. You fight. You fight. I remember the week before I was transferred, I had to have one of the counselors had to stay with me at all times because one of the girls threatened to kick the baby out of me.
That sounds terrifying.
It was. It definitely was. And she was a scrapper. She was a scrapper, so it's not like, she was just saying it. She meant it.
Yeah.
So, my wonderful counselor, Miss Osai, I will never forget her. She's still in my life. She made sure I was as protected as she could, and, she kept me there until the very last minute, because you've got a certain window where you have to be transferred into that, you know, pregnant girls group home because the regular group home is not equipped for everything. And so, she kept me there until the very last minute so that my experience at the pregnant girls group home would be short.
Can I ask as well, after your daughter was born and you were out of the group home, and especially after going through all that trauma,
Mhm.
how did you cope? Did you have a lot of trauma responses? What was life like that first few years?
I had a lot of trauma responses, but I didn't know they were trauma responses until last year.
Okay.
Um, I had been in survival mode since I was 15, but I thought I was living life normally. You know what I mean? In my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm doing the things. I'm getting a job. I'm a productive citizen. I'm not out here robbing, lying, cheating, and stealing. You know what I mean? So, I just acted like I was normal. I learned from the experience with my father. I learned how to be able to scream inside with a smile on my face. So, people have always thought I was like this happy-go-lucky person. But it was a facade. It was a mask that I wore because I felt like I had to. I never felt like I could be me. It it just didn't fit in with anybody else's, opinions to be me.
Yeah, that
So
makes perfect sense.
yeah, so I had trauma responses up until that suicide attempt. That was the final one.
And are you okay if I ask some questions around that?
Absolutely.
Was there like a set event that happened that led up to that moment, or was it a build up of all the things that you had gone through that led you to that tipping point?
It was a buildup, but, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, And my sister who lives here in the DC area, had lost her partner of 20 something years. He was the only uncle my children knew. Um, Suddenly, he she was taking their breakfast dishes downstairs and heard a thump, and he had had a heart attack and passed away. And, my sister, who is this very type A business congresswoman type, you know, individual, very calculated, very on sharp, very on point, um, she needed some support. So I flew up and, tried to be that support for her. And I remember watching her sit at the edge of the bed, and she was just staring in space. And, I've seen my sister cry one time in my life, and that was when my mom passed. Um, so to see her so broken, it hurt. Like, it hurt my soul, but I couldn't react to that. I never had time to process that. You know what I mean? So, I'm being the strong one for her while we're burying him and going through all the things that you have to go through with that, and, so I stayed up here a week. And I remember when I was going home, my body just kept screaming, "Go to your house. Go to your house." But then it's like, "Oh god, I don't wanna argue with him. He's expecting me to be at his house." You know what I mean? I'm tired, and I really need to process losing. I call him my brother-in-law. They weren't legally married, but he was still my brother. Um, I didn't have time to process losing him. I didn't have time to process seeing my sister like that. Um, I held it all in for her. And so I get home, he picks me up from the airport, and I'm trying to be, happy and things like that. And I said, it's really funny. When I lived in DC, when I worked for White House appointees, I was so busy, I didn't have time to visit any of the sites or museums. But we should take your son because he's so into science and things like that. It would be great. And the car got cold. And I'm like, oh crap, it's going to be a long night. And so I get home, he puts my suitcase in the bedroom. I go to hug him. He moves away from me, and I'm like, oh God, now I'm shaking. And I went and took a shower, and I stuck my phone in my robe pocket and started recording by audio, because at this point I need to know I'm not crazy. I need to know I'm not losing it. And I sit down on the couch, and he goes, "I'm not going anywhere with you where you traipsed around with another man." And I'm like, "What? I just told you I've never been to any of the, what are you talking about?" And because I didn't say, "Okay, well, I'm sorry," it was a huge argument, a huge argument. At one point, I remember zoning out, and I just stood up while he was yelling and walked in and got in the bed. I was so numb, and I kept recording, and I recorded that entire night. And he kept coming in and out the bedroom, starting nonsense. Um, I woke up the next morning. He came in the bedroom. He wants to pick up where he left off. I walked over to the dresser and swallowed a whole bottle of sleeping pills, followed by coffee and vinegar so that they would disintegrate. Um, his response was, "Oh, great. Now I have to go to CVS to get you some Ipecac." And he leaves the house. I walked out of the house and walked to the woods and laid down. Um, my daughter, who's very spiritually connected to me, my middle child, tried to call. I'm not picking up, which is unusual for her. Usually if I'm on the phone, I'd be like, I'd hit that button on the phone that says, "I'll call you right back. I'm on a phone call," or whatever. Then she tried to look at my location, thinking maybe we had gone to the antique shop or something, because we used to do that on Sunday mornings. And she's like, "My mother's in the woods." So she calls him. "What is going on?" And he tells her, "I've gone crazy and taken pills and left the house." Um, I don't really know what happened. I don't know how my life was saved. I've tried to request those records and they send me just the bills. Um, I don't think it's meant for me to know how my life was saved because if it were, then those records would have been able to be found. Um, but I remember waking up in the hospital and my first thought was, wow, you can't even do that right. You can't even do, you're so worthless. That was my first thought. You can't even do this right. And so I spent 8 days in the hospital, mandatory. Um, I never told them what he was doing because I didn't know. I thought it
It's
was just
so
normal couple
hard.
arguments. And
Even the, having to record as well, were you gaslit a lot?
yes,
Okay, because yeah, I understand that needing to record to have something to look back on, say, "This did actually happen," or even yeah, I completely
exactly.
understand that.
Yeah, it was just like I got to the point to where I was like, I need to know. I need to be able to hear for myself. Not while I'm in the moment freaking out or scared, but I need to be able to reference this by myself and listen. And so my daughter, who is amazing, she's strong, she's so brave, made sure I was put into the hospital that was by our house, not the one by his house. And he called every day to argue with me on the psych ward. Actually, I was only supposed to be there 5 days, but because they saw me so upset every time I got off the phone with him, they extended my stay by 3 days. Um, when I got out the hospital, you know, I get to my house and he had put everything of mine in black trash bags at my house and put it all over my house, down to the Band-Aids that I brought for his son.
That's
Now,
so heartless.
yeah, and the key to that is I found other women's clothes and belongings and things like that in the house while I was staying with him. So my thing was, oh, you told me you forgot to get rid of, this nurse's uniform. You told me you forgot to get rid of this bubble bath. You told me you forgot to get rid of this soap. However, you remembered everything, including band aids and the container of vinegar that I drank. And so, even after that, he's like, we'll work on this relationship or whatever. And my sister called me the day after I was discharged from the hospital. And she's like, "I feel bad because I didn't even see it." And I said, "It's because I'm a master at masking. I didn't want you to see it." And so she said, "Will you come home?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll come home." So I packed up my place and 60 days later, I moved to DC. And up until July, he tried to continue his manipulation and it got to the point I just stopped answering the text. I just stopped because, by now I'm in therapy every week. You know what I mean? I'm starting to recognize that something's amiss. But it was not until almost a year and a half later when my therapist told me that's covert narcissism, and you went through prisoner of war level psychological trauma. I mean, my body kept score. You don't realize how it affects your nervous system. Like, I was walking on eggshells, apologizing if I gave her dog too much kibble, you know, always scared, always nervous. Um, and that didn't leave my body until last year this time, where my body finally started to relax. So it's whew, it was a lot. It was a lot. And his parents think he's God. Um, and I really believe his sister picked up on it because she told him, Christmas of 2021, you need therapy. She lives up here where I live. Um, she's a lead attorney for TikTok. She told him, you need therapy. So I think she picked up on some of it, but he had told them things about me that weren't their business. Like, he had a whole conversation with them about the sexual abuse that I went through as a child. That was nobody's business. He even told the teacher friends at school about it.
Oh my gosh, such a
I
private
was
thing to share.
so humiliated when I found out. I felt so small because I just kept repeating, "That was not your story to tell. That is not your story. I trusted you with it." And he's like, "Well, what's the big deal?" So, yeah, it was quite an experience. I feel sorry for his son. I really do, because his son is such a remarkably sweet soul. He's got the sweetest little angelic soul in the world. He was so much sunshine for me. He was actually the reason I held on as long as I did. And he knew that. He knew that because at one point I did start packing my stuff and told him I was going back home. I had my place. I was paying rent for an empty place. Um and well, what about him? You're leaving him too. And knowing that I have a soft spot for children, I stayed. And his son has epilepsy, and so do I. So his son bonded with me because his son knew I understand exactly what he goes through. He finally felt like somebody got him. So yeah, I feel really, my heart hurts for him. My heart hurts for that little boy because he is just such a sweet little angel. Such a sweet angel, and doesn't deserve the parents he has.
That must have been so hard having him used against you.
Very much so. Very much so. Because my bond with his son was authentic. I really loved that little boy, and I remember right before the whole shebang happened, I had sent him a text message, and I told him I was sending it by text so he could always see it, that he was the son that I had been begging God for 13 years. Because I have all girls, so I always wanted a little boy. And I sent him a text and I said, "You're the son that I've begged God for the last 13 years." And so I hope he remembers that message, or I hope his parents didn't delete it.
Yeah. Sorry. Um, oh, I can't believe that you've been through so much and then you have the strength to then share your story to like raise awareness and help others. It's amazing.
Yes, it's been an amazing journey from, my first time being on camera discussing what happened with the world to now. But like I said, those emails are priceless. I did an oracle card reading for a woman this morning. Her response is priceless. You know, her trust is priceless. Her having a similar story to mine, um, and her feeling like she connected with me. No money can buy that. So, I receive a lot of feedback, and it's where I am raising awareness about, sexual trauma as a child and incest and domestic abuse. So I'm glad I can be the voice for everyone. I'm happy to
Could
be
I
that.
could I ask you if you were going to give advice to a survivor of abuse, whether, they're going through it at the moment or they've already been through that period, even though we know the after effects last for a long time,
Mhm.
what would be some advice that you would give?
The first thing I would say is heal. Stop and heal. If you've gone through it and you haven't had children yet, pause and heal. Because it will affect the rest of your life. Your decisions are affected by those events for the rest of your life. Your brain is wired differently when that happens. So whether it's therapy, or any of the metaphysical healing modalities, choose it and choose you. Um, Second of all, you matter. I see you. I need you here. You have a purpose. We all have a purpose, so you're not useless, you're not damaged goods. In fact, you're special because it takes one hell of a person to survive those things and keep moving forward with life. Those like, those are the 2 things I wish somebody had told me when I was 18, just pause and heal. Even though I did have 1 child already, I really wish I had just paused and healed those hurts.
That's really good advice. Sorry.
Thank you.
It's I'm so, so thankful that you're talking about this because I know I said before, but there's so many things that you're saying where I relate and that advice, oh, that like hit me. So I'm really excited for other people to hear that as well and to hear your story. I'm so thankful for you coming on.
I am grateful to have been chosen to be a voice for those who are hurting. I really am. I now know my purpose and I walk in it every day. It's every day I wake up, or every night because I'm up all night. Every day I wake up, it's how can I make someone smile today? How can I make someone feel like they've been seen today? Because those 3 little words, less than 10 letters, "I see you," it's what I wanted to hear my entire life. I just wanted somebody to see me. I always felt invisible. So, that's the way I live my life now. How can I see someone else? How can I make someone else, whether it's a smile in Walmart or, a podcast. That's what I was pushed back into this realm by my mother, who's been gone for 25 years. I begged her to let me stay on the other side with her, and she said, "No, your purpose actually begins now." And I remember her like pushing me. She did like that, and that's where I woke up in the hospital. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I'm like, "Lady, really? I want to be with you. I'm tired." But my mother's with me in spirit every day. She guides me. Um, I see her in everything I do. The healed version of her. And I'm I'm just I'm so grateful to have her guidance. I'm so grateful to be able to feel her presence again. Because when my mother was healthy, she was the most beautiful woman in the world. And she could put a smile on anyone's face. My mother had this energy that just made everyone feel loved and wanted and welcomed. But it wasn't until she went through her own mental breakdown with the physical diagnosis that things happened with her. So I forgave her on her deathbed. I made sure I was there to let her know, "Mom, I forgive you." I didn't want her to go to the other realms feeling that guilt. I wanted her to feel free. Um, but yeah, she's with me and she guides me every day, and I love it. Do
Um,
you?
Before we finish up with the recording, was there anything else that you wanted to mention before we turn it off?
No, I just want everybody who's hurting, who's been through that, to know you're not dirty and you're not damaged. In fact, a lot of us who have gone through that have very high callings on our lives. So hold on to that. You're special.